Hi, thank you for joining me here today. I am really excited about talking to you about healthy nutrition for your family because it is such an important basis for everyone's health. I am going to talk to you about the reasons why healthy nutrition is so important and give you some useful, practical tools that you can implement right away to improve your children's health and nutrition. Diet really is the first step to better health, mood, behavior, and sleep. And I'm going to talk about the why, the research behind healthy nutrition, and then I'm going to tell you what to eat, what you need to eat to be healthy, and what not to eat, what to avoid. And then I'm also going to tell you how to get your children to eat the food you want them to eat, because that's sometimes the tricky part. So why is a healthy diet so important for your children's health? Well, for once, a healthy diet definitely improves your child's health, and not just while they're children, but lifelong. Healthy diet improves the microbiome, and a healthy microbiome is one of the best predictors of excellent health lifelong. And healthy diet also improves your digestion. So you'll be able to absorb the nutrients better that you take in. I see a lot of children with constipation, tummy aches, and you can fix that just with a healthy diet. You don't necessarily need to take medications for that. Also, a healthy diet obviously prevents nutrient deficiencies. And I do see a lot of children who have low levels of, let's say, iron, and that can be fixed just with a healthy diet. There's plenty of research on the connection of healthy diet and mood and behavior in children, and I'll go through some of that. And of course, also better focus and attention. So in this first part, I'm going to talk about what to eat. You should eat food that your grandparents would recognize as real food, as opposed to packages from the supermarket shelf that you just mix with water, and that's a mix of additives and processed food that your grandparents would never recognize as food. So from food, we get two things. We get the macronutrients, that's your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fat. They're important for energy and for growing. And you get fiber, which is very important for your gut flora, because your gut flora uses that fiber that we ourselves cannot digest and thrives on that. And then you get micronutrients, and that's the vitamins, the minerals, the essential fatty acids, phytonutrients, and antioxidants. And these are really important for your health, your immune system, and for your brain development and brain function. And we need to get all of those from our food, and you can get them just from a healthy diet. So whenever I talk about diet, I need to start with the beginning, because I'm also a lactation consultant and breastfeeding is really close to my heart. It is what we're evolved to do. We are mammals, and like all other mammals, we breastfeed our children. There's a small percentage of moms who cannot breastfeed, and we have other options for them, but in general, we really should aim for supporting breastfeeding and making it a successful experience. So breast milk is designed specifically for each species. So elephant moms make the perfect milk for elephant babies, and human moms make the perfect milk for human babies. Breast milk contains growth factors for each organ and the immune system, and it promotes a healthy gut flora. So for example, breast milk has special sugars in it that promotes the growth of bifidobacteria in the gut of the baby. And bifidobacteria are the most important bacteria in a baby's gut. The longer you breastfeed a baby, the higher the IQ, the lower the risk of allergies. Every single part of the body is affected by breastfeeding. So ideally, breastfeeding should happen for 6 months exclusively. Nothing else should cross the lips of the baby. And then you should breastfeed along with solid foods from 6 months for 2 years or beyond, as desired by the mother and the baby. Those are the recommendations by WHO and UNICEF. And that is what I would recommend as well. After 6 months, when you finish your exclusive breastfeeding, my favorite way of starting solids is baby-led weaning, where you actually wait for the baby to be ready to sit up, grab food from your plate and put it in their mouth. And the best foods to start with are vegetables. And the reason is that you want to train the baby's taste buds to like vegetables, because that's really the most important food for them to develop a taste for. Every human likes sweets. Everybody likes sugar. So you don't need to train your child to like sweet foods. But vegetables are a bit harder. And they are the ones that contain most of the antioxidants and phytonutrients and so on. So really important to get your baby used to vegetables. Now, the nice thing is when you're breastfeeding, every single feed of your breast milk tastes different depending on what the mom has eaten before. So babies who haven't breastfed have already had some training of their taste buds, but then you need to continue once they start feeding themselves. So I like soft foods that you can prepare into tiny little bits that they can pick up and put into their mouth. You want to make sure they don't choke on their food. So avocado, sweet potato, pumpkin are really good foods, vegetables to start with. And then you can introduce new vegetables every day, every couple of days. If there are no allergies in the family, you just add on more and more. And within a few months, your baby's going to eat a very wide variety of foods. So what is an optimal diet? The most important thing I want you to remember, apart from that you should eat food that your grandparents would recognize as food, is that you should aim for 5 servings of vegetables. And a serving is what fits in your palm. So if you're a small person, your palm is much smaller as compared to an adult. But so whoever's size, you take their palm and the goal is 5 servings of vegetables. Only about 5% of Australians and Americans actually get to those 5 servings. But it is very, very important and beneficial to get there because the vegetables feed your gut flora, they give you nutrients, they help prevent constipation. There's so many benefits from vegetables, so really need to get there. So 5 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fruit, and not the other way around. So many children actually eat a lot more fruit than vegetables, and fruit are healthy. I don't want you to stop eating fruit because they also contain antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and so on, but they're also quite sweet. So you really want to keep that ratio of 5 servings of vegetables and 2 of fruit. Then in order to get fiber into the diet, you want to have as many different kinds of legumes and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds. 1 serving of legumes, 1 serving of nuts and seeds, and several servings of your whole grains and starches every day. Now, the more variety of fiber that you eat, the more diversity you will have in your microbiome, which is one of the biggest predictors of good health. And what should you drink? Water. You really only should drink water. We do not recommend juices because they are usually processed, they're high in sugars, and they're not good for your microbiome or for the children's teeth. And they are often kind of empty calories, and certainly do not drink soda. So here you can see 1 serving of food is what fits in the palm. And remember the 5 servings of vegetables a day and 2 of fruit. And even if your child right now is only eating half a serving of vegetables, that's fine. Just slowly introduce more vegetables, more variety, more amounts. There's a way of hiding them if your child is really super picky, in sauces and baking even. So you can get there. I've seen hundreds of families getting their children from eating no vegetables to their 5 servings a day. So I want to talk a little bit more about what an optimal diet contains. So obviously you want protein. Now, in Australia, New Zealand, the United States, hardly anyone doesn't get enough protein. It's quite the opposite. Most people eat too much protein, which can affect their kidneys. So you need about 1 milligram per kilogram, which is not that much. And it's easy to get that from eating a variety of legumes and nuts and seeds and tofu, tempeh, and a little bit of meat and fish if you desire. Then you want your whole grains. So which ones should you go for? So you want to go for variety again. You don't want to eat just white flour. First of all, that's not a whole grain, but secondly, it's also just a very monotonous diet. And you do not want to go for that sad diet, the standard American diet or the standard Australian diet, which is basically just white and a lot of white flour and white sugar and bad oils. We don't want that. We want variety. We want the colors of the rainbow. And we want whole foods, unprocessed foods. So oats are great, buckwheat, quinoa, millet, brown rice, sweet potato. These are all foods that contain very beneficial fiber for your own health and your gut flora. Then what kind of oil should you use? So olive oil is my favorite. And you can even use olive oil for cooking if you want to. You should probably not fry too much food, but if you do, olive oil is okay. If you use cold oils, you can also use nut oils or seed oils. And omega-3 is also really important, which you can get from algae or from fish oil or from fish. Then every day you should include some fermented foods, which are, so the fermented foods are full of bacteria for your gut flora. So those are the probiotics. And the fiber that you eat in your diet through your legumes and your vegetables and your fruit and your whole grains are the prebiotics. So those are the food for your gut flora. Both are really important. So in most cultures, people consume some kind of probiotics. So either kefir or kombucha or some sauerkraut or kimchi or some pickles. All of those contain bacteria, which are good for your gut flora. So it's a good idea. And you don't need a lot of it. Tiny little amounts, just as condiments, are fine. And then another nutrient that people are always concerned about is calcium. So you do need 2 to 3 servings of some kind of calcium-rich food. In the Western diet, we usually rely on dairy for that, but dairy is not necessary to meet your calcium requirements. You can also meet that through your nuts and seeds and calcium-enriched non-dairy milks. So, but just remember, we do want enough calcium for our children's bones to grow well and for their nervous system as well. So, fiber is very, very important for your microbiome diversity. So the more variety of fibers you eat in your diet, the more variety and diversity you will have in your microbiome. And the diversity of the gut flora is key for your health. So we have like maybe 500 different kinds of bacteria growing in our gut. And each of these bacteria, they thrive on different kinds of fiber. So if you only eat one type of fiber, you're not going to have that diversity. You also do not get that diversity by taking fiber supplements. Yeah, so you really should get that from your diet. The fiber we eat is indigestible for us humans. So we only produce about 17 digestive enzymes. But the microbiota, the bacteria growing in our gut, produce thousands of enzymes, and they can therefore digest and ferment the fiber that we eat. And they produce short-chain fatty acids, which are essential for our health. So for example, they produce a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, which is the primary fuel for our gut cells. So the cells that line our gut. So you can see how we are really working together with our microbiome. People who eat a processed diet have about 40% less of diversity in their microbiome. And this is a big predictor for health or poor health. So you really want to get the diversity up. The diet that has been shown to be the most beneficial for the microbiome is a plant-based Mediterranean diet, which really has a lot of different vegetables, legumes, whole grains, fruits, and good oils and nuts and seeds. So that's what I'd like you to aim for. So now I've given you a lot of information about what's important in a diet, and I'd really like you to remember the 5 servings of vegetables a day, if that's the only thing you remember. But to make it really simple, I want you to imagine the plate that you're serving to your children or to yourself. I want you to have half the plate filled with vegetables and salads and fruit, and then a quarter should be your protein, which can be vegetarian, and a quarter should be your starches. And if you eat that kind of meal 3 times a day, and I know most of you probably don't have a lot of vegetables for breakfast, and that's okay, but you have to make up for it with, you know, maybe morning tea and afternoon tea to get those extra vegetables in. But that's really the idea. Think of that plate in your mind when you plan a meal. And even if everything is mixed together, just keep the ratios in mind. Half the plate vegetables, a quarter the protein, and a quarter the starches. And water should be your drink of choice. You can add a little bit of lemon to that. Now, what is the best source of vitamins and minerals? It's your food. You can get all your minerals and vitamins from your food. Sometimes if you live in a country where you have soils that are deficient in some minerals, then you may have to take a supplement or find foods that are grown somewhere else. A good example is, for example, iodine. So there are areas in the world where the soils are very low in iodine. And people who eat the food that is grown there don't have optimal iodine levels. And iodine is very important for your thyroid and for your brain development. So really important to have enough iodine, especially while you're pregnant and breastfeeding and while you're a young child growing your brain. So you can get iodine-rich foods. For example, the little seaweed snacks are high in iodine and make up for that lack. Calcium. You have a little list here, a chart that shows you how much calcium your child needs at their specific age, and also some tips on how to meet that requirement. Now, if you have dairy, dairy is quite high in calcium, and we often rely on dairy for meeting our calcium requirements, which is probably not the best way because dairy also contains quite a high level of phosphorus, which stops the calcium from being built into the bones. So it is a good idea to also diversify and have some nuts and seeds and some of the, you know, like beans and dark leafy green vegetables and sesame seeds that are high in calcium in your diet throughout the week. Now, some people say, well, you know what, it's too difficult to eat a healthy diet. I'm just going to take a supplement. But just as you cannot outrun a bad diet, you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. So you really need to work on your family's diet, and that will be the basis of much improved health. So I've talked about what to eat. So I want you to remember the 5 servings of vegetables, the diversity of fiber, drinking water, getting enough protein. And now I want to talk about what not to eat, which is equally important because when you look at the typical diet in Australia, New Zealand, the United States, most people eat the foods we should not eat. About 80% of the foods that are sold in supermarkets are just a mixture of white flour, sugar, or high fructose corn syrup, some unhealthy fats, and some additives. And they're mixed into a variety of different tastes. So you can get the, you know, salty things, sweet cereals, baking, but it's all basically the same ingredients. And we do not want to eat those ingredients. They're highly processed and they do not give you nutrients or fiber. So what I want you to do when you go to the supermarket is actually shop on the outer edges of the supermarket. If you look at the layout of a supermarket, when you come in on the outer edges, you have your vegetables, your fruit, and then you get your protein, your meat, your fish, your legumes. So those are the much preferred aisles of your supermarket. Don't go to the center where everything is just processed and full of additives. So we want to avoid the ultra processed foods, and they're mostly white unless they have additives in them that make them colorful. You want to avoid the additives. You want to avoid as much as possible sugar and high fructose corn syrup, which are bad for your gut flora, but also for your metabolism, for your teeth. And you want to avoid, of course, allergens. So if your child has specific allergens, avoid those foods until the immune system is maybe able to outgrow it, but definitely avoid those. You want to avoid the cured and deli meats because they are full of nitrates, which are not good for you, and all the hydrogenated and trans fats. Now, if you take that list and avoid those foods, really the easiest way to do that is to buy fresh food, fresh fruits and vegetables, and make your own meals rather than relying on a package, which will for sure contain these. Interestingly, just eating 4 daily servings of ultra-processed food increases the mortality by 62%. And that is the diet that most Americans and Australians and New Zealanders eat. So what I'm trying to do is get you away from that ultra-processed diet to a healthy, fresh, diverse, real foods diet. Also, children who eat a Western diet, so that standard Australian diet or standard American diet compared to a Mediterranean diet, have twice the risk of having a diagnosis of ADHD. So you can see that the diet affects the brain as well and the ability to focus and pay attention and learn. When I did my training in pediatrics in San Francisco more than 20 years ago, I had a lot of parents who came and said, you know, whenever my child eats an orange lolly or has an orange drink, they go crazy. They climb the walls, or after they've been to a birthday party, they're just so hyperactive and irritable. And I asked my mentors, my superiors, and they said, don't believe that. That's just the parents making that up. And I always thought, well, why would the parents make something like that up? And then eventually in 2007, we had this very lovely study in The Lancet that confirmed what the parents had been saying all along, that food additives affect behavior. And in particular in the study, it was the artificial color, the 102, and the 202 sodium benzoate preservative. And what they had done, they had divided kids into 2 groups and had kind of a simulated birthday party, and half the kids got an orange drink that had the 202 and the 102 additives in it, and the other half of the group had a similar drink, or a drink that looked the same but didn't have the additives in it. And within half an hour of having had the drink, you could see the difference in the children. The kids who had had the drink with the additives were hyperactive, they were irritable, they weren't able to play and cooperate together. They were uncoordinated, couldn't do roly-polies anymore. And the children who had had the healthy drink were calm, cooperative, playful, and very well coordinated. So there was a clear difference. And this study has actually been replicated many times now. There have been lots of TV programs. People love doing it, taking the 2 groups, and you can find that on the internet and see the difference in the groups, and even seeing the difference in their drawings, how one group loses the ability to draw beautifully and the other group doesn't. So it has been established once and for all that these food additives can affect children's brains and their mood and their behavior. So these food additives are not doing anything positive to us. We don't need them. They just make food more attractive and more stable in the shelf, for their shelf life. So once you have a preservative in there, you don't need to necessarily sell it within a few weeks. You can keep it for years. And once you have an orange color in there, children will see it and think, oh my God, I want that. But it's not good for them. So, and they have, now we have a whole new wave of healthy coloring. So for example, for the 102 coloring, you can also use curcumin, which is an antioxidant, turmeric, to get the same yellow effect without the negative effect on the brain and the health. So which additives should you avoid? I would say you should avoid all of them as much as you can, especially the 102 and the 202 and the 212. I recommend getting either the app for the chemical maze or the little booklet. Books are out these days, everybody just has apps. And you can look up every single number. So there's some numbers that are actually healthy. So for example, ascorbic acid, vitamin C is also a preservative, but that's fine, that's healthy. But you really want to avoid the flavor enhancers like the MSG, the artificial flavors, the artificial sweeteners. In the study notes, I have a whole list of additives that I want you to avoid. And you can take that, print it out and take it to the supermarket, or you can get the Chemical Maze app. And, as you avoid those, you will hopefully see that your children will be calmer and happier, and that, they sleep better maybe even, and learn better. So it's a really big, important step to eliminate food additives from your diet. Another really important point in nutrition for children is the glycemic load. So this is the glycemic index or glycemic load is a number that tells you how quickly after you eat your blood sugar level rises. So if you have, for example, white sugar, it has a glycemic load of 100, and very, very quickly after eating the white sugar, your blood sugar level will go very high. And then your insulin kicks in and it drops down the blood sugar level, brings it back to normal. Now, if you have that quick rise and quick drop, you'll get very hungry, and then you want another load of sugar, and you go up again, and you have this zigzag all day long, which makes you really irritable, makes it difficult to focus and concentrate. And what we want instead is we want a low glycemic load, for example, for breakfast. And there was this beautiful study where they divided kids into 3 groups, and they got either a low, medium, or high glycemic index breakfast. And the children who had the high glycemic index, which was a sugary cereal, by the time they got to school, their blood sugar level had already peaked and gotten down, and they were not really able to concentrate very well. Whereas the children who had the low glycemic index breakfast, which was an oatmeal porridge, and their blood sugar level went up slowly and then stayed quite stable throughout the day, they were much better able to focus, to concentrate, and to be calm. And that's really what you want your children to be like at school or at home. You want them to be able to focus and use their brain and not be stressed. So on this chart, you can see how the blood sugar level goes up. That's the red line. That's the kids who had the sugary cereal. When it goes down, they get hungry, they get irritable, they get fidgety, they can't pay attention. And then they have, they really crave more sweetness. They get it again. They take out their muesli bar or something. And their blood sugar level goes up again. And then the insulin kicks in again, and it drops again really too low. And they become impulsive and irritable. Whereas the children who are on that green line, the gentle one, they don't go through this constant roller coaster of emotions and feeling. So very, very important to keep that in mind. So if you can give your children a healthy, low glycemic index breakfast, you set them up for a really good day at school. So sugar is not only bad for that blood sugar level, but it also is associated, of course, with obesity. And we have a huge epidemic of obesity all over the developed world. So in America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, obesity is on the rise and causing a lot of health issues. So increasing basically the risk for metabolic disease and high blood pressure, diabetes, things that we don't want to have to deal with. And it's completely preventable. Sugar is also bad for your teeth. And so children who have sugar constantly or juices, you know, that do have a higher risk of tooth decay. And, you know, whatever your teeth are like as a child will affect you for life. You know, if you can maintain your healthy teeth and have a healthy second growth of teeth, it is so much healthier for not just your mouth, but the bacteria that are growing in your mouth also affect even your heart, even your liver, you know. So it is, our body is connected, all the parts are connected. Sugar also has a negative effect on your immune function. So the more sugar you eat, the more likely you are to not have a great immune response when you're exposed to a virus, and you may get sicker with it. And sugar affects your gut flora. We've talked a lot about gut flora already and how important the gut flora is for digesting your food, producing those short-chain fatty acids that give energy to your gut cells. But the gut flora is also, you know, sending messages to the brain, has an effect on your mood, on your behavior. And so if you have a healthy gut flora because you're avoiding sugar as much as possible and have healthy alternatives, you will be happier and healthier. And sugar affects your mood, your behavior, and your learning. I would urge you to, this weekend, to watch the movie That Sugar Film. It's a great, fun movie for the whole family and shows you how sugar affects your health and your mood, and also where sugar is hidden in lots of food that we actually think of healthy foods. So for example, think of a yogurt. You know, you don't think that a little tub of yogurt has more sugar than a Kit Kat, or that a little bottle of orange juice that we think of as healthy has more sugar than a candy bar. So sugar is hidden in health, in so, you know, thought of healthy foods. And we need to be aware of that, because you really want to not get over the WHO recommendation of at the most 5% of your calories coming from sugar. And for children, that's about 6 teaspoons, which I think is a lot already. You know, I would not want my children to have 6 teaspoons of white sugar, but you know, that's kind of the limit of what the WHO has set. But if you can replace this sugar with healthier options like maple syrup, or at least brown sugar, you're already making a positive change in your children's diet. Sugar is hidden in so many different ways and under so many different names. So here I've given you a whole list of what sugar can be named on foods that you buy. So be really aware of that and try to avoid them, because all of these have a negative effect on your glycemic index, on your gut flora, on your teeth, on your brain. So take that little list and go through it with your children and discuss how this is not fantastic. Maybe that's a nice little activity after you've watched That Sugar Film. So how do you wean kids of sugar? Most kids who come to me are eating a lot of sugar, and it's just part of their normal day. So how do we get them to still be happy, but have less sugar? So one thing is a really nice little public health initiative that was started about 25 years ago in the Scandinavian countries, in Sweden and Denmark and Finland. And the dentists there got together and said, we see so many children with cavities, we need to do something about that. So what they did is they called Saturday Lolly Day. And children were given a lolly or an ice cream or whatever they wanted sweet on a Saturday. They brushed their teeth, and that was it for the week in terms of pure lollies. So if on Monday or Tuesday they asked, oh, can I have a lolly? You'd just say, oh, it's just a few more days till Saturday. And you'd be surprised how quickly children get used to that. So, I know a lot of families who first said, oh my God, that's not going to work for my children, but it does, and there is nothing good or beneficial in giving your children lollies and sweets every single day. A friend of mine always says, you know, we're the only species that rewards our children with something that's actually bad for them. So why would you do that? You know, we can reward our children with hugs and kisses and praise and activities and experiences. It doesn't have to be a lolly. Now, the next thing to do is to really read the labels. I know it's hard because the writing on the labels is tiny, but you know, everybody can learn to do it. Even my husband learned to read labels and is now no longer bringing home things that I would disapprove of. Took a bit of training, but it worked. So check the labels for sugar. And you know, a lot of foods, even let's say pasta sauces, often have sugar added to them, which is not really necessary. We don't need high fructose corn syrup in our pasta sauce. And then dessert, you know, a lot of our children want a dessert every single day. So I think, you know, once again, we can rethink that. There are hundreds of websites out there now with healthy alternatives for desserts. You can make an avocado and cacao chocolate mousse with a little tiny bit of maple syrup in it, or a date. You can do a carrot cake with beans in it, or a brownie that is, you know, nutrient dense with black beans and beetroot. So, you know, if you still want to give your children foods that look like dessert a few times a week, you know, go for those. They're definitely much healthier for them than your usual just ice cream out of the freezer, which is a lot of sugar and unhealthy fats and probably additives. And then, of course, you know, a little bit of fruit, some nuts. Those are, you know, things you can give your children every day. And there are still, once your taste buds are no longer so used to the super sweetness of pure sugar, you actually start enjoying eating the fruit for their sweetness. And remember to, you know, reward your children with something that's good for their health. So, you know, positive parenting, you know, love. You never give your children too much love. That is much more important than giving them sweets and sugar. If your child is really not into drinking water, I have a little recipe here for you to make a stevia lemonade, to just wean them off maybe the very sweet drinks they're used to, or as a special treat for parties. It's perfectly healthy. You can make fizzy water with something like a soda stream, add some freshly squeezed lemon juice and a little bit of stevia and maybe some ice cubes. And this is going to be a healthy drink which will not negatively affect your gut flora or your ability to concentrate. So a nice little treat if you want that. Now, talking about things that are not healthy for us to eat, apart from the additives and the sugar and the ultra processed food, I have to mention fish, because that's a big question I'm asked all the time. Is fish healthy? We do need omega-3 fatty acids for our brain to function well. And omega-3 fatty acids are the most commonly recommended supplement for children with ADHD, for example, because it works. But the problem is that our oceans are so polluted now and all the pollutants that come out of the environment end up in the ocean, that the fish growing up in the ocean are also polluted. And the most worrisome of all the pollutants is mercury. I test a lot of children for their mercury level if they have behavior issues or learning problems, and many of them have high mercury levels, and it's purely from eating fish. And it is not just mercury, but it's like a marker for other toxins like the PCBs and the PBDEs and the dioxins and chlorinated pesticides. So some of these toxins have been banned for many years, but they're still in the environment and they sink to the bottom of the ocean where the small fish or the krill eat them. And then as you go up the food chain, they get more and more concentrated. So the larger the fish, the more concentrated the mercury and the other toxins. And then people say, well, what about farmed fish? Well, farmed fish is unfortunately no healthier than the wild caught fish, because they are grown, you know, in very, very concentrated farms where they're very close together. So the farmers have to actually add pesticides to the fish so that the sea lice don't attack them. And then, you know, salmon, for example, usually gets this beautiful orange or pink color from eating krill. But when they're farmed, they're not getting fed krill. They get some ground up other animals to eat. And then the farmers add artificial pink color, which, you know, we talked about the artificial additives, that they're not very healthy. So not a great choice. So if you eat fish, I recommend eating small fish. Yeah, so things like sardines or even smaller krill, you know, they will still give you the omega-3 that you need, but they won't have the highly concentrated mercury as you would have in large fish like tuna or mackerel or swordfish. So go for the small fish, or even go for where the small fish or the fish get their omega-3 from, and that's algae. So the fish get their omega-3 by eating algae, and you can eat the algae if you like. Very healthy, and the algae are usually grown organically so that they don't have the problem with all the contamination. Now, another common question I get is meat healthy? So I'm myself a vegetarian. I don't eat any meat, and I do that because of the health issues, the health concerns for myself, but also for the planet and for the animals. But if you do eat meat, less meat is definitely better. And there's certain meats that you should not eat at all, and that's the processed ones. So those are the salamis and the bacon that are, contain nitrates and nitrites, which affect the blood's ability to deliver oxygen to your body and your brain. And they definitely increase the risk of cancer. So they are the WHO has designated them as cancer causing foods, and they should be avoided. So as we talked about the environmental toxin that accumulate in fish, the same thing goes for meat. So, you know, if you have pesticides in grass or in grain, if an animal eats a lot of these and accumulates the toxins as you go up the food chain, there will be higher concentrations of these. There's also in many countries antibiotics used in meat production because the animals grow faster with antibiotics, and hormones. So which we do not want to give to our children. You know, we wouldn't choose to give our children antibiotics unless absolutely needed. So why give them through the meat? And the more meat you eat, the higher the risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and death from any cause, actually. So all the kind of first world health problems, chronic disease problems are increased in risk by eating more meat. One big thing that meat lacks is fiber. And I've talked a lot about already how important fiber is for the microbiome to get that beautiful, diverse microbiome, lots of different bacteria growing that produce lots of different chemicals that are good for you. And the vitamins and minerals that you get in meat, the animals got those from eating their feed, which is usually vegetables. So you may as well get those directly from the vegetables yourself. So another good way of getting protein is legumes. They're also a very, very good source of fiber for the microbiome. They're rich in B vitamins and in many different minerals, including magnesium, which is really important for your muscles and your nervous system, for not getting muscle cramps, for example. Magnesium is also really important for sleeping well. So legumes give you that. There is a bit of a controversy about phytates. So phytates are called like anti-nutrients because they bind some of the minerals. But the research really shows that overall, people who eat more legumes are healthier than people who don't. And that is because of phytates. Yes, they do bind some minerals, but they also bind toxins. They bind heavy metals so that you don't absorb them into your body. So overall, the balance shows that legumes are healthy. And I highly recommend adding them to your diet and having at least 1 serving of legumes a day. There is a good way of preparing them. That's soaking them overnight, then throwing out the water and cooking them in fresh water until they're nice and soft. And this way you make them more easily digestible, and you also reduce that phytate level a little bit. Now, if you haven't eaten legumes for a long, long time, you don't want to start with a huge bowl of hummus or chickpeas. You want to start slow, because if you're not eating a food, you haven't fed the bacteria that thrive on that food and that digest that food for you. So you need to slowly grow that colony of bacteria. So if you haven't eaten chickpeas in years, start with a little bit. Otherwise, you may get a tummy ache and some bloating because nobody is there in your gut to digest them. So remember that for any kind of food that you haven't eaten in a long time. Now, should you go for organic or is conventional enough? Overall, people who eat organic food are healthier compared to people who don't, but that may be due to other lifestyle factors, because people who eat organic are also more likely to exercise and to eat healthier food. But there are some interesting studies on pesticides and children's health. So one in particular showed that children who had the highest levels of pesticides in their urine were more likely to have a diagnosis of ADHD. So it doesn't show you that it's the cause, but you know, it suggests that there's a connection. And the closer a pregnant woman lives to a field where organophosphate pesticides are sprayed, the higher the risk that her child will later develop autism or ADHD or other developmental learning problems. And you know, there is nothing in those pesticides clearly that's healthy for our brain. They are, their whole point is to destroy insect and bee populations without whom we cannot survive. But also, you know, they affect the nervous system of these bugs. And we have the same kind of nervous system. We're much bigger, but if we accumulate those pesticides, especially during times when the brain is growing really, really fast, so during the pregnancy and early childhood years, they can still affect the brain. And, you know, even if we don't have fantastic studies to show that, you know, that it's 100% sure that pesticides are bad for us, I think the precautionary principle is really, really valid and important. And that is, if we think that something is probably bad for us, to avoid it. And, you know, wait until there's proof that it's not bad for us. So it should really be the companies that are using the pesticides, it should be on their shoulders to prove that this is not unhealthy, rather than us having to prove that it is bad for us. The Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, brings out every year a list of the Clean 15, which are the 15 fruits and vegetables that are pretty safe to eat, even if they are not organic, because they usually have thick peels, so like a melon, an avocado. And then they have the Dirty Dozen, which are fruits and vegetables you should never buy unless they're organic. And the top is always your berries and apples, and all the fuzzy summer fruit like peaches and nectarines and apricots. So those I wouldn't buy unless they're organic. I get my berries, you know, through the year from the freezer section. Organic berries are always available. And because they are snap frozen right when they're picked, they actually retain their minerals and vitamins really well and the antioxidants. So there are ways around it. I'd urge you to go to the EWG.org and look up their website, because they have a lot of other information apart from the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen that may be helpful to you. Now, I've talked about the foods that you should eat every day and the foods you should avoid. And now the big question from you is, how do I get my children to eat that? How do I follow that advice and give my children the 5 servings of vegetables? My child doesn't even look at vegetables. Now, my advice would be, don't talk about how the food is healthy, because children are not interested in that. eat the food in front of them with enthusiasm. Make it fun. Make it fun from the beginning of getting the food, you know, grow a vegetable garden so they actually see where the vegetables are coming from. And kids love playing in the dirt and seeing the lettuce grow and then picking it and, or pulling out the carrot out of the soil. And go to farmers markets where they can see lots of variety of fruits and vegetables in their natural state without packaging, and let them touch the vegetables, let them, you know, choose one or two each week and say, you know, we're going to, whatever you want, we'll buy this week and we'll prepare it in some way together. And even if your child just starts with playing with the carrot and then licking it over time, it's a process of getting them used to eating them. Now, every family starts at a different level. Some kids are already eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and then you don't have this problem. But a lot of children I see are very, very picky. So you really want to go with the developmental stage of the child. So, you know, if they're old enough to grate a vegetable, give them that job, or even to cut it. Then otherwise they could wash them, or they could hold a mixer, you know, just see what they can do for you. You can let them play with food, that's fine, yeah, and have pretend tea parties for their teddy bears with little slices of carrot. Let them really get involved in prepping the food and cooking the food, and then eat together as a family. In general, when families have a separate meal for the adults and a separate meal for the children's meals are always less nutritious. Yeah, so, and it's not to their advantage. So much better to make one meal and everybody eat it together. And remember that children do what they see. They don't do what you tell them to do. So if you eat your vegetables with great enthusiasm in front of them, that actually will affect them and entice them to eat or try at least the vegetables. So you want to be a good role model. And one of the things you should also model is not to have screens at mealtime, because that distracts, you know. Mealtimes are a great time to be sociable, to practice conversational skills, and, you know, to have a fun time as a family. So now, if you have a super picky child who really doesn't want to try fruits and vegetables, don't give up. Eventually, they will all eat it if you are consistent. So it can take 10 times. It can even take 20 times for a child to try a new food before their taste buds get used to them and they start enjoying it. And maybe they won't enjoy all the vegetables, but, you know, if you have, you know, slowly increase the variety of vegetables over time, they will eat more and more. So don't give up. And one little trick is zinc. Soils in Australia, New Zealand, America are quite low in zinc. So a lot of children actually have low levels of zinc in their body, and that affects their taste buds. And it affects their sensory issues. So they may actually be really revolted by certain textures and just can't cope with them. And also they just may not taste the food properly. It may all taste just like cardboard to them. So one of the signs of having low zinc is having little white spots on the fingernails, so you can check for that. And you know, other symptoms of low zinc is being easily frustrated and getting lots of colds and infections and having slow wound healing. So if your children have those kind of symptoms, maybe go to your health practitioner and have their zinc level checked, because once their zinc levels come up, they usually start eating much more variety and start enjoying the food. The other very common deficiency in super picky eaters is iron. You need iron to have actually the energy to chew your food. You know, kids who are just too kind of low energy to even chew and look quite pale and may not sleep very well, they could be iron deficient. Once again, go to your doctor and have that checked. The other issue with low iron is that if you have low iron, you get a high leptin level, and high leptin suppresses your appetite. So, you know, really, really important to get those things right. So if your child is picky, make sure they get enough zinc and iron. and just re-expose them. Try the same new foods again and again. Make it fun, eat as a family. And I can promise you that over time, they will start eating a wider variety and will enjoy it. So what I'd like you to remember from today is that the food is really the basis of good health. You can make a huge difference in your child's general health, their mood, their behavior, their learning, and their sleep if they eat a healthy diet. You want to eat whole foods. You want to get your 5 servings of vegetables a day. You want to avoid the processed and ultra-processed foods and reduce sugar intake. And you want to eat as a family and make it fun. So if you do all that, you've really done the first step to a happier and healthier family. So thank you very much for listening today. And I hope I've given you some helpful information and some useful tools. And in the study notes, you will have lots of handouts with information and healthy meal ideas that you can try right away. Thank you.